Chapter 22. Tegan spent the rest of the session explaining his new guide safety procedures. The two primary rules were make eye contact every few minutes and don't do anything without warning. He also insisted that they communicate in code so that if Finton's mind became conscious at any point, he wouldn't know what they were doing. Their homework was to create their code words and have them memorized by the telepathy session on Thursday. It took them all of study hall to create the list, though that was mostly because their friends kept interrupting. Dex kept grumbling about telepaths. Biana kept begging to use her ability to sneak into the healing. And Keith kept interrupting with unhelpful suggestions like snickerdoodle and hippity pop. And Keith is the awesome lord of everything. Only Jency and Mirella left them alone, though Sophie could tell they felt left out. She wasn't dragging any more of her friends into all her drama. The commands they finally picked were Alden, no reason to worry. Malomelt, I found something good. Dame Elena, I'm in trouble. Verminon, get out as fast as you can. Everblaze, I'm going to use a brain push. Fitz hadn't understood why Sophie wanted a code word about brain pushes, but she'd used the rare method of channeling during Fitz's memory break, and it happened right before everything went wrong. Part of her kept wondering if the two elements were connected. Hopefully she wouldn't need to take such an extreme measure this time, but in case she did, she wanted Fitz to be warned and ready. She was going to protect him every way she could. Sophie had figured her friends would want to come over after school, but Biana and Dex both got a ton of homework from the ability sessions, and Tegan gave Fitz concentration exercises to practice. Even Keith was stuck doing some sort of empath practice with his dad. And with Grady still not home, and Adeline outside giving the woman on a bath, Sophie ended up roaming her empty house trying to figure out where they would have put Jolie's old school things. There weren't a lot of places to check. The downstairs was mostly one big open space, with no closets or cupboards, or even any drawers, and half of the second floor was Grady and Adeline's room, which Sophie wasn't sure if she was allowed to go into. So there was an attic she didn't know about. The only places left were Grady and Adeline's offices, and Sophie had a feeling Adeline's was the better bet. It was the place where stuff goes to die after all. Sandor had to help her push open the door because a huge bin of unopened letters was blocking most of it, and the office inside was far worse than Sophie remembered. She'd never seen so many trunks and boxes in one place, all stacked into chaotic piles and draped with more junk, turning the room into a dusty maze. One trunk at a time, Sophie whispered, opening the one closest to her. A cloud of dust made her choke as she shifted through the tangle of silky lavender fabric inside. Sophie thought they were dresses, but when she finally pulled out, she realized they were tablecloths, edged with pearls and frilly lace. The trunk next to that held the same, and the one after that appeared to be the matching napkins. When the last trunk in the stack had diamond napkin rings, Sophie decided to move to a different spot. Hours passed with more of the same, and Sophie was fairly certain the labyrinth was stretching around her, trapping her with the endless supply of dust and party decorations for the rest of her days. Her nose itched and her back ached, but she forced herself to keep going, working through two more chests of crystal goblets before she opened a small black trunk stuffed with books and scrolls. The foxfire seal on a notebook made her heart triple in speed. But when she looked closer, she realized they were from Jolie's early levels. Pages of boring lecture notes from Elven history and multi-special studies. Many were doodles in the margins of a boy who looked like the photos she'd seen of Brant. There were stacks of sketchbooks, too, filled with gorgeous renderings of landscapes and creatures and other prodigies at school. Sophie had never realized Jolie was so talented, and she'd never realized she was a conjurer. She found the elemental guide to conjuring and translocation, with worn pages covered in hundreds of notes written in Julie's loopy writing. It was eye-opening and fascinating, but not particularly useful, and Sophie was about to move on to another chest when she noticed a crunched red scroll at the bottom, tied with gleaming gold ribbon and bearing a strange seal. Two hands with fingers intertwined, their wrists bound with golden threads. It took several tries to untie the extra knot in the ribbons, but when Sophie finally unrolled the scroll, she found 5 curled pages, all stamped at the top with the same seal. Underneath, in a fancy, frilly script, it said, "By official arrangement of the matchmakers, matchma- matches for Jolie Reuben." Every scroll had a date at the top, each one exactly a month older than the last, and a title that implied the matches had been ranked. The first page said "Top Tier," the one after it "Second Contenders," followed by "Third Considerations," then "Fourth Runner-ups," and lastly "Final Alternatives." And underneath each heading was a list of 100 names, 500 different matches to choose from overall. Sophie scanned the names, surprised that number 37 on Jolie's top tier match was someone named Oli Hex, who must have been Stina's uncle or cousin or something. Also on that page were two different Wackers, Benish Wacker at number 24 and Harlan Wacker at number 77, though neither were names Sophie recognized. In fact, none of the names seemed familiar, and it took her a minute to realize what that meant. She rechecked each scroll, making sure her photographic memory hadn't failed her, but it was exactly like she'd remembered. 500 names on the scrolls, 500 approved matches for Jolie, and Brand's name wasn't one of them.